Welcome back to another episode of Earthen's Den, and your girl is getting ready for some major laser dental work, and I'm actually looking forward to it. Now, it's not anything serious like a root canal or anything like that, but I'm getting my wisdom teeth moved, and I've got a filling, and I couldn't believe that I actually had cavities. Now, in my defense, it was a cavity that was in my wisdom teeth. Now, I know this is all TMI and it really doesn't matter, but I'm just shook, okay? Because I used to make fun of people who had cavities that were adults, and I'm like, oh my God, like, you're so childish. And then what do you know? It happened to be me. So I'm totally not looking forward to this. I used to love the dentist because, I kid you not, you can ask my mother, I never had cavities. Like, I was always the one sibling who didn't have any cavities. I didn't play that when I was younger. I did have, I had cavities, of course, and it was so painful that I vowed to never do that again. And so I didn't eat candy growing up. I stopped eating candy. Now, I was a chip eater. Now, I love chips and I love food and like cookies and cakes. That's my thing. But like when it comes to candy, I didn't eat any candy because I was like, I do not want to feel that again. So I'm getting ready to go under this. It's not a scalpel, but under this drill, and it's so ghetto, and I can't believe it. So anyway, in today's episode, we're going to talk about moving on. And there's something said about when you're in your 20s and you're healing, or if you're in your 20s and you have some level of self-awareness in regards to where you've come from, right? And we talk about where you come from. I mean, like in regards to, what you dealt with in your past and, coming up as, a child and getting out of that space. So when you're a child, you really were a victim. So I think, the thing and the reason why so many people walk around and everyone's like, oh, don't be the victim, like this person's just pretending to be the victim, it's really because they haven't addressed that childhood trauma, right? Because to be honest, you were a victim, right? You had no control over what happened to you when you were younger. You had no control over the decisions that your parents made when they were your caretakers. They were your legal guardians, right? They were your providers. They were the ones who were making decisions for you. So in that space, you didn't really have a choice, right? You were a child. It's not like you could leave and go do certain things. Now we do hear about those stories where people left home at like 13, 14, never went back, right? But we understand that that's not the vast majority. And so with that being said, when you were young, you were a victim and you have to heal from that. And I don't think people realize that and the importance of that. And as you heal through that, it makes a huge difference in your life. It really does. Now, I remember starting out from the very beginning with this podcast, and I was talking to you guys about healing and how I didn't necessarily feel as though healing was something that was lifelong. Now, I think that healing comes in waves and seasons, right? So I personally don't think that you're going to be healing from your childhood trauma all your life. The reason being is just because I just think that other things are going to happen. And once you recognize those things, you can start to work towards those things, right? And then it becomes another hurdle. So it may be, a breakup, or it may be losing a family member. You see what I'm saying? It's just natural things that occur in life. I don't think that you will be mourning childhood trauma forever. And the reason I really believe in that is just because I think it's just like anything else. You heal from it, you get better, and you navigate in a different way. You know what I mean? Especially when you address it. And it's important for me to share that with a lot of people because sometimes you can feel like, oh my God, this happened to me and I'm never going to be able to do X, Y, and Z, right? I'm never going to be able to have the relationship I want because this happened to me. I'm never going to be able to have the career that I want because this happened to me. And I'm not really here for that because I understand that that is just nothing more than the work of the enemy playing on our minds and plaguing us with this past that literally we had no control over, right? So the reason why a lot of people grow up and they struggle with like accountability and a lot of these things, I think it really is rooted in some of that childhood trauma because you were a victim at one point, but you're no longer a victim now, right? So it's very important to heal from that. And I can say, as I'm in the midst of my healing and forgiveness and working on trust and all of these really beautiful things, I can say that there's a peace that comes in and you have to allow yourself to feel, like allow yourself to mourn, allow yourself to sit in a space where, you really do sit with some of those feelings. But I think if you work at that continuously and if you're healing yourself and you're really sitting in those feelings and allowing yourself to feel what you're feeling and you're really working through those things and asking yourself some hard questions, I think you can come to the other side of that and it'll be a different version of you. And the crazy thing about this here is like growing in your 20s, it's so interesting. It's such a beautiful thing. I really do feel as though it's like a caterpillar and a cocoon, and then you become this beautiful butterfly. At least for me, that's how I'm interpreting my life and this journey. And the reason I say that is because I look back at who I was, in certain seasons of my life, and I'm just so thankful to be able to grow. You know what I mean? I'm so thankful to be able to grow and to be able to progress. I was struggling earlier. I was thinking about a dilemma that I was having in regards to forgiveness, right? So I know a lot of times people will talk about forgiveness, and we understand that it's the conduit to our freedom, right? We understand that letting go of people who've hurt us and just how much of a difference that it makes in our lives. And, we understand that it's just one of those things that you have to do to move on. But I think what we don't talk about in what we should talk about a little bit more frequently is how you navigate that and what that actually looks like once you forgive a person. Once you actually forgive a person, you don't have to continuously deal with them. I think that there's a lot of misconceptions around what forgiveness looks like. I really believe you can forgive a person and you don't want to deal with them anymore. You don't want to be their friend. You don't want to hang out. You're cordial. You're respectful. It's not something that's bothering you. You're not, you know what I mean? You're not necessarily triggered by them anymore, but you just don't want to deal with them anymore. It's like, okay, it happened and I'm over it. You know what I mean? And I think we have to realize that that's okay for us to make that decision. And we have to also realize that it's okay for other people to make that decision towards us. We have to understand that whenever we do something in our lives, whenever we make a decision, whether it was consciously or unconsciously, we have to be accountable for the actions and the decisions that we made, right? And sometimes when we make decisions, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, it has an impact on another person. Now, if you're someone who's in a victim mentality, which I think in your 20s, it could just be such an experience, because a lot of people are kind of in that space because you're young still, and yet you're still not really sure what happened to you, yet you are aware what happened to you, and you're working through that. You may be talking about it to someone, you may not be. And so, it's just it's a mess. Like, it's a big mess, and it's a lot of things that have to be addressed and sorted out. And so when you come to the opposite side of that, you realize like, oh, okay, yeah, I forgive these people and I can sit. Like, for example, your parents. I think your parents are, you recognize that the forgiveness for your parents looks a lot differently when you realize that they didn't intentionally try to hurt you. They weren't intentionally trying to ruin your life and jack your life up. You see what I'm saying? That makes a difference. Now, the opposite side of that level of forgiveness with people is that you have people who come into your life who did not have the right intentions towards you, and they actually did do things to hurt you, right? And so when you're in that space, it's like, wow, I can really sit in this space and realize that this person was doing this to me, not because they hated me, not because they didn't like me, but because they didn't like themselves and they didn't love themselves and they didn't, you know what I mean? And so I think when you're sitting in that space, it brings you a lot more compassion and a lot more peace, right? And then I also think it's very important to recognize the times in which you were doing what you did based on whether it was survival, whether it was consciously or unconsciously. You also have hurt someone's feelings that you may have cared about. Do you see what I'm saying? And so I think that space right there, you come into that awareness and you have that surrender in regards to whatever this person did, and then you make a decision. You can decide to deal with the person, or you can decide to not deal with that person ever again in your life. That's on you, and I think that that's something that's very important, because I don't think that we talk about that enough. You know what I mean? But I think you have to make a decision, right? I think that letting go doesn't necessarily mean reminding a person of the offense, but I think if you have something to where someone's done something to you and you have forgiven them and you decide to release them, and you can't necessarily, I'm not going to say forget about it, but it's like you're not oblivious to what this person did because it was just whatever it was. Then I think in that point, in that place, that you have to be like, okay, I'm deciding to see this person for who they are, and I'm letting this person go, because it's not on me to punish anybody. It's not on me to sit here and punish this person for what they did to me. You see people and, a person made a mistake in a marriage or something like that, and then this person is constantly beating them over the head about it every single day. I think in those situations, you have to ask yourself, okay, am I really, I forgive you, but am I really wanting to move forward in the next seasons, in the next chapter of my book, in my life with you? You see what I'm saying? And so I think that that's something that's very important, and understand that you can completely forgive a person, but now you have boundaries, and now you may not want to deal with that particular person again, and it's a very interesting thing, because when you're young, you're growing anyway, right? So it's like there's a level of naivety that you may have had when you were younger, and then you're getting older and you're realizing, like, you know what, there's a there's discernment between seeing the good in people and trusting that people have your best intentions, and not being in a space where you're seeing everything through the lenses with your past. But then there's wisdom and understanding that not everybody has good intentions towards you. And it doesn't make you skeptical of every single person that you meet, but it makes you wise enough to realize that not every person has a good heart and a good intention that's positioned in your best interest. You see what I'm saying? So that's a very interesting thing, I think, coming into that, especially being someone who was just, very reasonable, very understanding, very X, Y, and Z, and just overall a young woman, that changes things. So I think it's a very interesting thing to really sit with yourself and ask yourself some hard questions and, really break down what forgiveness means for you. What does it look like for you? And, as I understand it, I think that it's absolutely a weight off your shoulders, 100%. And it's, like I said, it's understanding that you got to take lessons from the things you've been through. You know what I mean? But it doesn't have to change you to a certain extent, but it's like you have to grow. Do you see what I'm saying? I just think in today's society, you guys, we don't really, I think that in today's society, everything is so sugar coated and everything is so desensitized that we're not really getting the growth in which we need. I talked to you guys a little bit about manifestation and things like that. My only thing with all of this stuff is, you guys, I tell you this all the time, is that you didn't really have to work for it. You didn't really have to work for it. You didn't really have to put forth any effort to obtain those things. It just happened for you, because that's how manifestation is. It's one of those things that's just kind of it's here, it's available, and people say, oh yeah, but manifest, but also put the work in. But it's the truth is that we don't really listen to that part. We listen to the manifest part. You see what I'm saying? And so I think when it comes to this conversation around forgiveness and all of these things and just growth in general, growth sometimes can be very painful. It's very painful to have loved one thing in one season and thought, a certain way about it, and then to get older and realize, you know what, I actually don't like that anymore, right? That's a departing of yourself, and it's dang, I really, you know what I mean? But it's growth, and I don't think people talk about that. You can change, and that's okay. Change is not always a bad thing. You didn't necessarily change for the worse. You changed for the better. You're wiser now. You know what I mean? You put away childlike things, right? When you were a child, you spoke as a child, you behaved as a child. And now that you're older, you don't think that way. And I don't think people talk about that. It's absolutely 100% growing pains, but it's discipline as well, right? Talk about the chastisement of the Lord. It's just one of those things where it's had you not been disciplined, had you not had to do the hard things, you wouldn't get the reward that you were really longing for. You know what I mean? It's that instant gratification. And I don't think we talk about that enough. I think too often it's just life just passes you by. No, in order for you to grow, in order for you to do things, for example, you take a person in a marriage, right? You take a man in a marriage with a woman, right? This person has to grow. They can't be someone who is, sowing their wild oats and doing all those things. It's going to take growth for you to become that. It's going to take growth for you to become a woman. It's going to, for example, if you're a woman and, you have some emotional spending habits, you know what I mean? When you have to grow up and you have to say, you know what? I have to stop spending my money every time I have a bad day. Excuse me. Do you know what I mean? So it's just one of those things where I just don't think that we don't talk about that enough. And the dangers of that, you guys, is that you're going to look up and you're going to be the same exact person and everything will be intact and you will be very comfortable and you will feel very connected to yourself, but then you're going to realize oh my gosh, I've let so many things go by in my life because I wasn't willing to do the hard things. I wasn't willing to change and grow and become. I think too often being an adult is associated with such a negative connotation. Being an adult is great. It feels very good to take responsibility for your life. To me, that feels really good. I actually love that. It feels good to say, you know what? This is what I want to do. I'm going to make sure that I carry this out. It feels very good to say, no, Jalen, we're not doing that. It feels very good to be responsive rather than reactive. That feels very good to me. And I don't think people realize that. So often we associate adulthood with all this negative stuff. And if you ask me, I think that's something to really look at and ask the question, who is typically the one who's bringing forth such a negative connotation around adulting? You know what I mean? What age group is that? Because personally, I lived, okay? Your girl has lived. Trust me, I was 17 out of high school. I went to my first bar at 17, doing a thing, girl. I was young, you know what I mean? I lived my life, and so I jumping job to job. Like I've gained some very cool experiences when I was young, and I was behaving like a child, okay? Like taking trips, okay? Come on, y'all know ladies taking trips, you only got a couple $100 and you just there. I'm just here for a good time. You know what I mean? Not a long time, just a good time. Having fun with my friends, like I did all of those things. And I don't think people realize. And so I think sometimes, to some extent, there's a lot of negative connotation around adulting when you didn't do the things that you may wish or felt like you could have done when you were a child. Do you see what I'm saying? Because I don't want to go back and live with my mom. No, this ain't talking about when we have setbacks in life and things happen. I'm talking about oh, do I miss that? No, I lived that. I was present in that. Actually, I was way more present then, right? We didn't have social media. I wasn't trying to figure out certain things. I just was present. That's why I tell young girls, I'm like, man, live your life. Trust me, you don't want to rush it, because then you are going to be someone who hates adulting, right? It's like, no, I actually love the fact that I live on my own and I don't have to talk to some people some days. Okay. I know it sounds a little crass, but I love it. You know what I mean? I love that I don't have someone hovering over every little thing, right? I love that I can make decisions for myself, and I'm learning to make better decisions, and I'm learning to do, you know what I mean? I'm learning to be an adult. I love that I'm learning responsibility and adaptability, and you know what I mean? I love the woman that I'm becoming, and I don't really have any regrets in regards to youth. I lived that. I did that. You know what I mean? And I don't even look back at it with such a negative thing. It's more so like coming into the new season and embracing this is what it is. And, I know for a fact I'm going to look back and be like, wow, I'm very proud of myself for the choices that I made, at this age and the stage in which I am in now, right? When I'm 30, I'm going to look back and be so thankful for the decisions I made when I was 20, right? Just like how I look back at my 17-year-old self, and I was very thankful that I lived and I did the things that I wanted to do, whether it was reckless, whether it was irresponsible, whatever. I was a child, and I was behaving as a child, and I'm very thankful that I was present in that. You see what I'm saying? So it's just important to understand that change is not always a bad thing. You don't always have to be one way because you've always been that one way. You know what I mean? It's totally okay to decide to change your mind and to be something different. And you actually should, because you never know where those turns may take you. Now, if you find yourself being so far off, then that's different. But I think we have to be mindful of that, because, it's your core beliefs. It's your values. It's your morals. It's who you are at your core, who you are in your heart. Those are the things that remain. Your interests, those things may change, and that's okay. Like, that's literally okay. And I don't think people recognize that either. I encourage everyone in your 20s, the moment you get out of high school, whatever, 18, whatever. I'm gonna say 18 because, at that point you're legal and you can kind of have a little bit of leeway. But I encourage people to try many different things, try different jobs, try different interests, try so many different things. And the reason I say that is because those experiences are actually going to help you find out what it is that you want to do. And you're going to be very thankful that you did, because you're going to be a little bit more well-versed, in regards to certain situations. If you're really present in any season in which you are in, and, if you're prayerful, you believe in guidance, things like that, you're going to find that where you are today is actually building you for what it is that you pray for and what it is that you're going to be called to in the future. So in summary, you guys, don't shy away from responsibility. And I would say this too in regards to forgiveness. I think you can absolutely decide to forgive someone and move on with your life and not really want to deal with that person anymore. I think you can absolutely decide to forgive someone and have grace and mercy when you realize that, you too have made some wrong decisions in the past. But I do not think it's okay to hold on to people and feel as though you have to punish them, right? And it's not okay for you to constantly remind someone of something that they did wrong. You can forgive a person, you can let them go, but if you are in a space where you don't have to deal with this person, right? I'm not talking about if you guys have a kid or something like that, but it's if they don't work with you, if you don't have to deal with this person, then it's important to assess whether or not, what you want to do at that point, because it's not on us to punish anybody. Like, that's just period. You know what I mean? And you have to grow, and you have to understand that not everybody is going to have good intentions towards you. And that's just life. You know what I mean? That's just wisdom. It's becoming an adult and no longer being a child with a sense of naivety about you, right? I'm not saying that you have to, be skeptical of every single person. But what I am saying is that you really want to use wisdom, and you want to be discerning, and you want to protect yourself, right? Because now you are an adult, right? You're no longer a victim. You're no longer relying on your parents to protect you, but this is on you protecting yourself. So, do you really want to invite that sketchy person over your house, because they say whatever, and it sounds good? No, you want to start, okay, wait a minute. Who is this person? Why am I feeling this way? Like, you know what I mean? You want to start to protect yourself, because that's just, you're an adult now. And that's what you have to do. Do you see what I'm saying? So when you're an adult, you have to make hard decisions for yourself. So it's like, do I really want to stay at this job that is treating me this way when I know that there is no possibility? Do I really want to give my life and say these vows or do these things with this person, and this is what it is, right? Like, those are some really major life decisions, especially I think in your 20s, because you're constantly growing, and it's such a vital, it's such a fertile ground for the fruits in your 30s and the fruits for the rest of your life, really. I mean, at any point you can pivot for sure, but I think that we should really talk to young girls about the goal and the foundation in your 30s. I mean, you're building a foundation in your 30s. Sorry, y'all. I think we should talk to young girls, and we should really, I'm going to talk to y'all. We have to stress the importance of having foundation and protecting that fertile ground in your 20s. And the reason being is because when you're in your 30s, you really don't want to have to go another decade with all this up and down, high and low. Now, don't get me wrong. I know a lot of people normalize that. And the reason they normalize that is because they didn't make those sacrifices in their 20s. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but what I am saying is that, it's a way to do things, and it's okay if you do things in a way that's a little bit more strategic, so that you can have that better fruit, you know what I mean, in your 30s. Like, I know a lot of people say, oh, you could do this in your 30s, you could do it whenever. Yeah, you can do it whenever, but why not do it now? Why not start now? I'd much rather make the sacrifices when I don't really have, you know what I mean, so much of a foundation. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's just very important to just recognize those things, you guys. I'm not here to tell you how to live your life. You do what you want to do. But I just, I had to come on here with a little bit of insight. And I hope that this podcast was insightful in regards to forgiveness, responsibility, and just navigating your 20s. Hope everybody has an amazing day.